Kokina semdol kake mofaseda.
This is Talking in Stations, a podcast about EVE Online. I, as always, am your host, Artemis Albosa, a member of Noir. Joining me today, once again, our co-host, Silver Suspiria, a member of Federation Uprising.
Hey everyone, missed you last week. Sorry about that.
Yeah, no worries. We had a good show in your absence. You should definitely go and check it out if you missed it. It was a show... Oh, what was that show about? Let's see. So we
Hobos?
had on the show with our hosts, we had Matterall and Ashtrothy both to fill in your spot. You had some big shoes to fill there, Silver. And then our guests, we had Hobos. And it's worth noting, we had a YouTube comment. I felt so bad. Hobos were in this big fight in Losec. It was like an 80 billionist capital brawl. And we totally forgot to mention it. Like, that was the whole, like, inciting incident for having them on the show. We just didn't talk about it. So that's a thing. I'm sorry, guys, if you noticed that was a thing, but you live and you learn. In any case, on today's show, we've got another fantastic guest. Today on the show, a member of Red versus Blue, and specifically the Blue Republic. Not sure how important that is, but we'll get there. His name is Zen Sai.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about Red versus Blue and what we've been up to lately. Should make for at least a couple of entertaining minutes.
Oh yeah, entertaining for sure and very informative, I hope. So we're doing this show as part of an ongoing series. We've got this is the third or fourth episode, I've lost count. But the show or the series in general is called What Does LoSec Look Like in 2020? So we've talked to a number of groups who have been within LoSec looking at, what do they do? What are they looking forward to in LoSec as we enter into the year 2020? And Red versus Blue, interestingly enough, notable for being a high sec like war deck alliance, so to speak. They're a very niche case of that specific thing. They have a mutual war ongoing, and I'll let Zen explain that a bit more in the future. But they recently had an excursion out into faction warfare low sec, which is why they're on the show today. But before we delve too far into that, let's do a bit of a history lesson. Zen, who are you specifically, and then who are Red versus Blue?
Right. So I'm the current chairman of Red versus Blue. Red versus Blue has gone through quite a few chairmans, and I'm just the guy currently in charge of keeping the lights on. I'm in Blue Republic, but as you mentioned before, it doesn't really matter. Blue Republic and Red Federation are the two corporations that are eternally at war together. That's been our historical model. I've been playing EVE for about 10 years this August, and before that I used to play and run MUDs for those old schoolers out there who might remember the multi-user dungeon all text when the internet was young and everything was right in the world. Yeah. Anyway, joined EVE because it looked a lot like a text-based game to me, and it pretty much was, so it fit right into my playstyle. Loved the game and have stuck around ever since. The only MMO I've ever played. My early days, I was known for being rejected by EVE University, one of the few people to ever apply to and not be allowed into EVE Uni.
How did that happen?
Well,
Wow,
they
yeah.
don't technically tell you why. That's one of their rules, or at least it was back in the day. If you get rejected, they don't tell you why, but I pretty much know what it was. I was playing around with some of the JITA scams and local and all that when I was first starting out. Wanted to make some easy ISK and see if that could get done. And I asked about it, if is scamming an issue for EVE Unity? Because I mean, that's one of the things that kind of attracted me to the game, was that it had no rules about that kind of stuff. And they said, well, it's kind of like don't ask, don't tell. So during my interview, I think I might have failed the interview by not mentioning that slight fact when they asked about how I made all my ISK. But yeah, that's pretty much what happened there. But it just made me like go out into, I guess, the real EVE's game kind of thing and try to find out how things worked on my own. And I sought training from everywhere I could, including Nor Academy, and actually spent the first 6 months of 2011 in Nor Academy and then Nor.proper.
Nice.
Alexiev card and all that, but I had no business being there whatsoever. I was in way over my head, and they were really, really cool guys to me. And I was a complete new bro, and I just want to learn PvP. And they went through the ropes with me twice. I actually went through Nor Academy 2 times because I couldn't make it to the graduation thing on the first one, but had a great time doing that, and noticed that Artemis was in Nor too. So shout out.
Yeah, you were in there a bit before my time, but that's an awesome thing.
Yeah, it was fun. One of the things I learned so much there. One of the things that they made all the Nor Academy graduates do back then was you had to FC a fleet, which I thought was absolutely terrifying at the time. And I took some guys out to camp a wormhole or something silly like that. Everybody's bored off the tree, but it was the most intimidating thing I had done in EVE by far at that time. Just telling these bitter vets like what they should be doing with their ships at any given time was terrifying. But it was great fun, and it like got me over that hump to start FCing, which I totally credit to Nor Academy and Nordot and Sniper Rue, who was the instructor back then.
That's awesome. Like you mentioned text-based games. I also feel like I've been playing EVE my whole life because I played Trade Wars back in the day. If
Yeah, I
anyone knows
played
what
Trade
that
Wars
is.
2 on the BBSs.
Yeah.
Hell yeah, man.
I was sysop for a while and did some.
Me too.
I ran the USO. Really? So we probably know each other from a previous life.
Probably. It was
And we should-
305 area code pirate BBSs back then, but then Miami-Dade area.
Yeah, I jumped on it when internet broadband became a thing and the server turned over to Telnet. But for those of you who
Right.
don't know what we're talking about, like Trade Wars is a text-based EVE. It's exactly the same. There was a
Yep.
high sec, there was low sec, there was pirates, there was stations.
Turn-based.
Yeah, turn-based though, right? That's very interesting.
But yeah, it was cool. And so yeah, then I flew some incursion fleets, got into a C3 wormhole, talked my wife into going into the C3 wormhole with a pair of Drakes and farming that for a summer one time. Joined Red versus Blue in late 2011 and managed to avoid all responsibility for 7 really amazing years, being a total filthy casual, which is what I still consider myself, even though they managed to talk me into being in charge. I ended up accepting promotions basically because I've been complaining about how current management was handling things. So when it was like, oh yeah, well, you think you could do better? Okay, fine. So now I'm here.
Wait, they actually let it happen? They let
Yeah.
you take over?
Yeah, and I got promoted like 3 times without. They didn't ask like if I wanted a promotion. They're just like, nope. Now you're an officer. Nope. Now you're a senior officer. Nope. Now you're executive coordinator. I'm like, what the hell is that? Okay, now you're director, and so on. So, but
Well,
yeah, that
you
was.
know-
I blame it all on Nikolai Mazenkov.
That's how a lot of leaders come to be, though, right? Like
Yeah.
you have the curse of activity and energy, right?
So I was FCing. So
people
that,
just
right,
keep-
right. That puts you on the front line.
Yeah, and people just keep promoting you, right? That's how I became, where I am and Fed Up. Like the guy running the corp was just like, "Oh, you're a director now." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Yeah, exactly.
"Oh, you're an FC now." I'm like, "Oh, okay."
Exactly. So I didn't reject it because it was an opportunity to push the organization in a place that hadn't been. RBB's been around since I think this is like our 12th year. So it's gone through a lot of changes, and to be honest, we probably peaked in like 2014 or so. So it's been an amazing ride, just seeing the model adjust to the changes in the game and how RBB as an organization adapts to those changes has been really spectacular to see. And the faction Worth thing is just the latest kind of incarnation into what we're becoming, which I'm
So
still not sure what
what-
it is.
What is the model of RBB? What
Well,
are you
it started
known
out
for?
being the high sec war deck thing. So we'd have Red Federation in one system and Blue Republic in another system, and we kind of meet in the middle. So you'd have like one system in the middle to basically fight at, and we would just constantly set up fights, and we actually had at one point enough people that we could have organic fights where you could just log in any time of the day and undock and go to the other guy's HQ system and definitely get a fight of some kind. If you could, you get on comms, you start a fleet or something, and you could always have some kind of action going on, which was the whole point. The whole point was like we wanted PvP availability for people who didn't have time to invest 12 hours a day in the game, or didn't have time to set timers for 2 a.m. to come and play. This is like specifically for filthy casuals to play in an environment that was safe and basically easier than it was. Like back when we started, ECM was still super strong, and like pod, we didn't have Citadel, so you couldn't switch out of your pods. So like people had implants in they didn't want to lose. They wanted to keep the training implants in, but they wanted to get some PvP too. So we appealed to that sense of casual PvP, which is part of our nature that we've never lost, which I'm really proud of. It's like we're based on two things, which is like we want as much PvP action and content as we can possibly get, as many good fights as we can get, as much as we can get. And we also want to be completely open to new bros coming in. So all of our fleets are completely open to new bros. They can join, they can lose their ship. They don't get yelled at. They don't have to make it the fleets. There's no skill points requirement or anything like that. We operate on a blacklist model instead of a whitelist, and that like basically the only people that can't get into RBB are people who've been previously banned from RBB. So like all are welcome anytime. Doesn't matter the skill point, skill level, anything like that. But
Do you have
what it's more about.
any interesting stories about notorious people being banned from RBB?
Oh man, people that have been it's actually surprisingly rare to have somebody get kicked out of RBB. I mean, we only have one rule: is don't be a dick and don't cause problems. And
Well, I mean, like half the EVE player base followed your first rule.
well, I mean, it's surprising. Like we have, it's like we fill a space that's sort of between the serious PvP organizations and the NPSI fleet groups like Spectre Fleet and Bombers Bar and all that. Like we're somewhere in the middle. Like we'll let anybody come in and join the fleets. We don't really care. We open most of our fleets up to public. Like every fleet that we had when we were in Faction Warfare, we always advertise it on Militia Chat and let anybody come in. You know, spies welcome kind of thing used to be always, you know, our gig. We do have. I'll tell you one story we had about a spy that was kind of fun. We went to war with a Russian group. I forget what it was all about, but it was a very serious Russian group, and they would show up in like 40 Ferox fleets and stuff like that and attack our structures. And they actually put a spy in, and I forget the reason why we found out that this guy was a spy, but he got outed at some point, and he was enjoying himself more in our fleets than he was in his home fleets, and we were like making friends with the guy and everything, and we called him Chekhov because he had a Russian accent. He sounded just like Chekhov from Star Trek. So we kept recruiting him. We're like, come on, man, just stick around. You should stay in RBB. We really like you. Just hang out. We don't care if you're spying. Who cares? Just hang out with us. And we were just like pushing this guy, and finally one day he just disappeared, and we actually found out he biomassed. So like we pushed this poor spy to where he could decide like if he wanted to hang out with his new friends or his old friends. So he just like quit. So I don't know if that's good or bad,
Wow.
but it's a story.
That's great.
Right on. Let's that was an awesome tangent to go on, but let's wind it back.
All
Focus
right.
a bit more on RVB. You were the High Sec Wardeck Alliance, Mutual War, Casual PvP. Hit your heights in 2014. What brings you from there to joining Faction Warfare?
Well, basically, the whole model of RBB was almost like you sort of expected a matriculation level, almost like EVE University would have, because people would be coming into RBB as total new bros. They'd learn basics of PvP. Maybe they'd even learn a little bit of FCing. And at that point, they become a massive commodity for, pretty much any serious organization out there that wants to, give them free ships to fly for the rest of their EVE career. They're pretty much set. So they've got a great kill board, they've got great hours, they got great activity, they got a good attitude, they know how to use comms, they know how to scout, all this stuff. So we expect a certain amount of people to go through, but as with any old organization like RVB, you're going to have people that just stick around, and so we sort of formed this core friendship group that. And people would come in and out, like people would leave RBB and then come back in a year or whatever. And so we found ourselves roaming out in Faction Warfare space a lot because that was where we were getting the most content. So we were doing pretty regular roams out into Faction Warfare space, mostly Caldari space, and some of the Mars space too. But we were doing that on a pretty regular basis, and after years went on, that just sort of became the overwhelmingly most popular content that we were providing was just going straight into Faction Warfare space, not participating in the actual system, but just going into the space and hunting both sides essentially. And we got tons and tons of good fights for years and years. And then we just decided, everybody's doing this anyway. Maybe we can force some more fights if we actually join the side and start pressing some of the systems and seeing what kind of reaction we get that way. And so we made the decision to join Caldari Faction Warfare mainly because it was going to not lock us out of JITA, and which we found out really wasn't a huge issue in the end. So we hopped in, and it turns out you can actually have two corporations that are at war with each other while also being on the same side in faction warfare. They call it a civil war. So it didn't even interrupt our model in the slightest. And so every now and then we'll do an RVB type event where we actually do red versus blue, and we just keep it in low sec and play around like that. But mostly we're just out there trying to generate content. And we found that sitting in those sites actually did bring out Caliente militia in droves. Like we were getting content delivered essentially straight to our doorstep. We just, pick a random system, spread out, start capturing sites, and then boom, Caliente militia would show up in force and try to force us off the sites. And we were getting really, really great fights for quite a while, and it was a huge success. And we were I had just gone to Eve Vegas and not Eve, Amsterdam first, and saw CCP Ghost presentation on retention and basically how important it was to get people into fleets and how important it was to recruit people personally one-on-one, show them that we want them to join. So that started to really increase. We were applying CCP Ghost presentations points to really increase our recruitment. So our recruitment started, skyrocketing, and our fleets went from 10 to 15 to 20 to 30 within a matter of weeks, and it was really amazing. And like I said, the content was getting delivered to our doorstep, and then after a while, things started to change. Like we started to push things a little bit more seriously. We were attacking structures, and we were trying to actually take and hold systems, but what we found were there were a couple of factors that made that pretty much impossible. One was our casual nature. We pretty much had a set time zone that we were always in. There was 6 hours that you can count on an RVB fleet happening for sure, and then pretty much the other 18 hours you could count on never seeing an RVB member online. And that's just sort of how things have developed. So we would capture sites for 6 hours, get them up to about 85%, and then come back the next day, and they'd been reversed back down to like 5%. So
are you guys like EUTZ, USTZ? What time?
We're like late EUTZ going into early USTZ kind of a thing. Like
crossover.
Like, yeah, because we have a bunch of EU guys and a bunch of USTZ guys in, and so we're kind of like trying to split down the middle. But so yeah, there's like just from like 2000 maybe to 0200, somewhere in there is usually when we're active.
Yeah, and faction warfare is a funny thing. Like when you're sieging a system like that, we always used to say if you can win 2 out of the 3 main time zones, you're going to win the system if contested.
Right.
So you kind of need 2 time zones to at least put in. The second time zone doesn't have to win; it just needs to slow them down enough so that the third time zone doesn't do enough damage, and then you can get back into your strength and roll it.
Yep. And when we first showed up, we were getting really good fights from Galmo. They were bringing out like really nice comps, and we were getting, cruiser versus cruiser and battleship versus battleship, and it was like amazing content. It was like, oh my god, it's like the old days. It's like a dream, And but then after a while, they basically got tired of fighting us on those levels, so they turned to basically cheap fit Derbtron, Atron fits, and then it just became a war of attrition. So they would stack up on a novice or whatever, and these super cheap fit Atrons, and anything we bring in, they'd just chew it apart and win the ISK war pretty much every fight. They'd get 2 or 3 ships down, and we destroyed their whole fleet, but it didn't matter because if you add it up, they won the battle on the ISK. So
yeah, I mean that's a very old school. That's a very old school faction warfare tactic. The old Derptron is legendary in faction warfare, and Battleists, right? I'm sure you saw the Catalyst.
The Catalyst too. Yeah, that was the other version of it. But it was always like, we could only keep our members interested in doing that for so long before everybody was like, let's go find some place else. Let's go to Tama, And so we don't have to ship in a bunch of crappy fit frigates to try to win the ISK war here. It's just wasn't fun for me.
Yeah.
Is there like some sort of mechanic that prevents you guys from using smart bombs? I feel like smart bombs is the solution here.
Look, like again, we're really casual, and they were taking it very seriously, and maybe they should. We were attacking Vilier, which is like their fortress system at the time.
Oh yeah, can't attack Vilier.
Yeah,
I'm sure Juliana Soder had something to say about that one, huh?
Yeah. We'd be sitting around talking smack and fleet, and all of a sudden be like, oh crap, a novice popped up. Nobody noticed it. Oh, now it's full of freaking Atrons. So yeah, you can't get the smart bombs into the novice, and so you got to go into the novice to try to flush them out, or you just got to accept the fact that they're going to be camping the novice while you do other sites. And
Yeah, to answer Artemis's question,
Yeah.
you can't get a ship that can fit smart bombs to kill Atrons inside a novice
Right.
Plex.
right.
Mm.
So it's an effective technique, and I don't hold it against them. I miss when they used to bring out like the really good stuff, and we'd have really stand up fights, but can't get what you want.
Well,
So is
Caldari
that-
has a couple of advantages there. The Atron is hard to beat, but you got stuff like hook bills, that
yeah.
the Caldari have that are
The
very
problem
tough
though
to
is a
crack.
typical hook bill is going to be what, like 20-30 million.
Or Merlins.
Yeah, but like we like fitting and flying ships that are fun and
I
interesting.
get you.
You know what I mean? So it's like we could, and we started it. We did Punishers. We fit up some really hard fit Punishers, and all they did is like take the exact Punisher fit we had and like counter by using the exact Punisher fit that we were using, which is like messed up our morale because we're like, yes, we have an answer for the Atrons. It's Punishers. They went, yeah, well, what about Punishers?
Yeah.
Mirror match, lovely. Again, they just made it not fun, which is it worked. I mean, it made us go find something else to do, so it worked.
So what else did you do then?
Well, like I said, we started pushing on structure bashes and stuff like that, but then our draw was showing up to that, and one thing you need to understand about RVB is like it's a pretty much like a giant group of FCs. So I, as chairman, I just let the FCs sort of compete with each other as to bringing content, like what's going to be the fun content for this week, what are we doing, and whatever they come up with, I let them do. So a couple of guys decided they were going to put up a Fortizar in Valiliar. And I didn't know anything about it till I woke up in the morning and saw the kill mail. I was like, oh wow, okay, maybe we should have planned that out or something. But yeah, no. And it came and helped shoot it down, and then so somebody got pissed off, and our group was like salty about the fact that Init had come out and participated in it. So then they started poking around in Init space and the GMVA space and F7 CTAC, and we're like, hey, I wonder if we can get like any content or at least like piss these guys off by like messing with their jump gates and stuff. So we started attacking those, and they'd show up. We'd come in like 10 Hecates, and they'd show up in 100 Lokis and drive us off, and we just come back later and start poking it again. We started messing with their structures, and we actually ended up trapping a couple of dreads that logged in and decided they were going to drive us off with a solo dread. We got some really good kills out of that, and GMVA, to their credit, actually brought some battleships out for some of that content, and we had some really great fights where they were fielding battleships with the fact support, and we were like in auger navies and straight up T1 augers, and just really great brawls. Had some really good fights.
So let's back up a little bit. Like you threw out a bunch of names that represent the political landscape of LoSec, which is sort of complicated, right? So when you first started Faction Warfare and you're plexing, you were interesting the groups that are in Faction Warfare for the plexing. So I'm sure you were fighting like GMVA, who's a very old Galente alliance.
GMVA and all kinds of Galmo, it was great.
So like Sons of Luminaire in there.
Oh, all the time.
I'm sure you saw like Aderon Robotics. These are sort of the classic names as it comes to Galente militia. And then when you escalated things a little bit by poking around with structures, you got the attention of the larger pirates. And in the Faction Warfare world, anybody that's not in militia is considered a pirate. That's what the term for them, right? So Ardra, who is Pen is Out, is their alliance, right?
Yep.
Kind of absorbed a lot.
Is Goons and Test are kind of the same, right?
A lot of
sort of form.
I'm hearing stuff in my ear. Weird.
Identity, right?
So, in the background, you have Ardra, who kind of absorbed a lot of what Snuff
they helped us, right?
left behind, right? So
absolutely.
Snuff came apart. A lot of their corps went to Pen is Out, especially in the U.S. time zone. So they're kind of filling that vacuum of power there, right? And I'll show you like that kill mail you were talking about here.
God, it's not much, man.
That's exactly right.
Oh, it looks like.
So you wind up getting like this kind of look here, and they're very famous for fielding those Macarials, right?
Most importantly,
There you go. So this is the kill mail. I was hearing that video that Ron was playing in my head. That one there. So talk to me about this. So this was the structure that you woke up to in Valeria.
Yep.
And so the other thing you should know about Pen is Out is that they have a long-standing relationship with Galmil. They are former Galmil, right? All these people like Black Fox Marauders was a long time leader corporation in Galmil. So they often come to the aid of Gallente militia, and they love to kill Fortizars. Did you try to contest this one?
No, I was, like I said, I literally wasn't there. And for the record, I blame Metal Jack. Yeah, I said it.
No, not Metal Jack. He's my old buddy.
Yeah, so you know Metal. So yeah, he's CEO of Blue Republic, and it was basically his project. Like I said, I let them all do their own thing, and I didn't know about that we were planning to anchor Fortizar out there. So found out about it later, and then it was like, well, how do we turn this into content? And yeah, it just went from there.
Yeah. So you had this fight where they took out your Fortizar.
Right.
And what? You came to the realization like, oh man, it doesn't look like we're going to be able to play with structures.
Like this. Yeah, like we're not. This is like unrealistic. We're just blowing ISK for no reason. And even though it was personal ISK, and that, for the record, it wasn't like RBB ISK. It was most of our FCs just sort of fund everything on their own. So once we found out that there's like, that's not going to happen, because every time it comes to a serious if we're putting something up, or if it's a whole structure time or whatever, you can pretty much count on bat phones coming. And then we've got bat phones too, and we were calling in let's see, UFC, Conifers, Trigger Happy, Spectre Fleet, Calmill, of course, and they would come and help, but then it just turned into like a bat phone versus bat phone kind of fights, and which just wasn't very interesting content for us. We'd like try to do anti-tackle and stuff like that, but we're not a huge organization like these guys, so we just felt a little bit out of place. And then it was just we're just arranging fights for other people mostly, which wasn't very fun.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I showed up to a few of those on the Calmill side,
sure.
Which was very ironic for me, but. Spartan is
and you have to understand, like Carl Zier, I consider Carl Zier a buddy. He's one of the big CEOs with Ardraw and all that. I met him at Amsterdam, met him at Eve Vegas. We hung out. He's totally good people. And I guess that's one of the things about being a casual organization is you never end up really mad at anybody. We love all the guys that fight us, and we truly do. And I think that comes from our roots of basically being where we fight each other. Like if you're red this week or you're blue next week, it doesn't matter, because we switch back and forth all the time. So we sort of approach all of Eve the way we approach RVB, if that makes any sense, where we don't get mad, we don't get salty. I mean, sure, you'll see salt and local from everybody every once in a while, but it's not like that for most of us. And so we didn't really care about the Fortizar loss. I know that sounds cliche, but it's true. And it got in contact with us later and was like, why are you harassing our jump gates and everything? It was a totally fair question, but we didn't have an answer to it, because the answer was, well, one of my FCs saw it and thought it might be fun to shoot it and see what kind of content it generated. That's really why. It's not like this was like, goal oriented or anything like that. Or we're not trying to take Saab. We've never tried to take Saab. We wouldn't know what to do with Saab if we had it, because we certainly wouldn't want to try to maintain or defend it. So
right,
it's all just for the fights.
So you had this Fortizar happen, and Initiative is there. I see some Initiative pilots on that kill mail, and the Initiative works with Ardraw and GMVA a lot, because there's this other thing going on with GMVA specifically, that they're sort of a hybrid alliance, meaning they live in Losec. Valeria is sort of their traditional home, but they have Saab holdings in Cloud Ring, which is just on the border of the Gallente war zone, right?
Right.
And in that area of Cloud Ring, Initiative has an iHub that they worked out so that they can have a jump gate there. So the jump gate allows them to come down from their space, which is all the way up in Fountain, through Cloud Ring, and then from there they can go many places. Cloud Ring's sort of a highway to, like, you could go up north to Fade and up to Tribute, or you can come down to Losec. So you have GMVA living in the south of Cloud Ring. Ardraw has holdings in the north of Cloud Ring, but in there as Initiative has a hub and some gates. So you decided, well, it might be fun to go just like one jump into Losec there, F7C, and poke the initiative jump gate.
And it's new content. We were getting bored of the faction warfare stuff with the Derptrons and all that. We were getting bored of getting, just setting up Batphone fights. So we're like, hey, let's take the fight to them. Let's go out into the obviously very important nullsec for them. It's right on the border with lowsec and all that. So it's got to mean something if we shoot this gate, right? Somebody look it up on Eve Uni Wiki and find out, what the timers are on these things. Let's, take a shot at it. And we actually went out in Tosis a little bit too. We got some Tosis ships and made them drive
I was there for that timer.
It was fun. Yeah. And it's all just about creating content and especially for new bros who've never been out to, lowsec or nullsec and all that. This is like super exciting stuff for them. We get to show our guys bubbles and, it's great. It's just more content.
Yeah. So you start shooting the initiative jump bridge. I saw a video on, if I can find it, I'll post it here in chat. And you got some good kills off of it.
Oh yeah.
And GMVA had some good responses for you.
It was fantastic, and we had third parties that were like coming along and seeing seeing us shooting, like what's this about? What do you guys do? And so we'd start talking to them, and so we got people to show up for the final timers that were surprised, and we thought we were getting driven off by like a bunch of nightmares, and it turns out the nightmares actually finished killing the gate that we were working on killing. It was great fun.
So did you kill that gate? You ended up killing the gate?
Yeah, we ended up killing it. Yeah, it wasn't like actually us. Like I said, just giant nightmare fleet came out of nowhere, and we were like, crap, here we go again. And then they actually finished off the gate. But yeah, we got it down. But then the NIT just showed up and anchored another one because what's Iski's to a 4,700 man alliance, right?
Yeah, so, but it's just it's great.
Yeah, it was fun. We mobilized this giant group to come out and deal with us, and it was. But yeah, they contacted us and asked us what we want. We're like, oh, we'll take a replacement for Dazar, and which they didn't even know they had shot. They're like, here's the kill mail. I'm like, okay, and like quit answering GMVA's bat phones. And they said, well, okay, we ran it up the flagpole, and this is coming from the CEO of Init and our entire FC staff. We are going to burn everything RBB has to the ground. So
nice.
They did, and our single Astor House was dead soon thereafter. And that's all we have, because it's like we're mostly based in HiSec, and we don't have structures. Everything's just for the content. If we put a structure up, it was just to get fights on the structure anyway. That's the whole point.
So
let's hang on real quick.
Mm-hmm.
Clarification question with the whole HiSec structure thing.
Sure.
How do mutual wars work with the new structure mechanics and war HQs and all that jazz?
It's tricky. Like, if it's a mutual war, we don't have to have a structure, so we can actually keep the Eternal War going without having a structure, which is actually very convenient.
So can you guys like do the mutual war and be ineligible for like trade hub
Correct. Yes,
to
that's
war deck
exactly
you?
how we are.
Wow.
Yep.
I did not know that. It's actually an interesting point there.
Yeah. As the mechanics have been a trip. Like, one of the reasons that we decided to branch out into lowsec was the change to neutral logistics actually kind of messed us up, because then we couldn't trade. Like, if we set up a red fleet and a blue fleet, we couldn't send a red over to blue to be their logi, because that was considered neutral logi, and Concord would come slamming down on them. So, but I mean, and the tethering thing, like when they changed tethering so that, we couldn't tether even on a friendly Astor House, you had to dock, which meant you had to have multiple undock bookmarks, because you can undock kind of randomly from the Astor. So it just sort of made the whole thing a pain in the butt. But it was really about the docking. I mean, for when we decided to go, it was like, if we want to keep doing, if we want to keep fighting in the same places we've been fighting, we want to keep going out to the same targets which we're going to do for a while, then we have to be able to dock up, because we have to be able to reship, because we love whelping ships, but you got to be able to reship,
So this is because Galente's got a serious push going on in the war zone now, and as they take systems from you, you can no longer dock in those NPC stations that the Galente own.
Correct.
So if Init's going around smiting your Astor houses, then there is no place for you to dock.
Right, so reshipping becomes impossible, especially if you want to try to fight with a war of attrition versus Atrons, because they're reshipping, automatically wipe out their whole fleet of Atrons. They got another fleet, in war.
Oh, yeah, that's because they build them in system. I used to do that.
There you go. So unless you have the ability to reship that fast, you can't even compete on that level of tactics, even if you wanted. So you have to be able to dock. It's just super critical.
Yeah. So you leave faction warfare, because
and just keep
you
shooting
can't
the same
dock.
people.
Yeah.
and we know more about how faction warfare works now, so it will improve our ability to hunt, because we'll just we'll keep an alt or something in faction warfare to keep an eye on the maps and what's going on, and then we'll know where to be for the best content. So it's worked out really well for us in the end. I mean, it's terrible. I mean, it sort of sucks that we have to leave Caldari Militia after being in. We made friends with a lot of groups and had a lot of good times fleeting up with them and stuff like that. But we're going to continue to do that. We're going to keep the friends we've made. It's just we're not technically going to be in Caldari Militia, sort of like we technically weren't in any militia for a few years before we even joined. So we're taking a step back from the step forward into Cal Mil, but we may return someday, and we may join another militia someday. We don't know, or wherever the content brings us.
So what, you sort of touched on it there, but what is next for RVB? You mentioned you will still be doing your roams in faction warfare. Are you just going back and focusing more on the high sec war deck stuff? Are you gonna have another excursion, maybe into like wormhole space or something? Like what's going on?
We had just today we participated in a fight in a wormhole with Beans, which I'm sure you're familiar with that group. They're one of the more popular, bigger wormhole type groups now. The Mighty Beans, and got a really great fight where somebody was, I think they were attacking a Fort Azar or whatever, but ended up losing the fight. The opposition managed to keep their fort, but RVB was in chat just raving right before I came on here about what a great time we had. It was like all, we flew a lot of logistics, and it was logistics and heavier metal stuff. So, I mean, we get fights wherever we can get them, and that's one of the fun things about making friends with everybody and having people come back as they branch out, go to some other group, and then come back in and say, hey, we've got this really great opportunity for a fight here. Just guys show up for the ping, and we're doing a lot of that. But to answer the main question that you asked, what's RVB going to do? We're going to go back to roaming faction warfare space in the same areas we've been roaming, which is basically out of Ikoria, which is a high sec system with a low sec entryway. We base out of the NPC station and just roam our little butts off out there in Black Rise and Placid, and we're going to continue to push FC7 TAC and see what kind of fights we can keep getting out of there, because that content hasn't dried up. So it's going to be great.
So is the old school RVB ethos of you have Red Federation, Blue Republic fighting each other in an eternal war in high sec, is that gone now?
It's not gone. It's just mostly on hold. We do it for events now. It's sort of like part of our past more than it is our present, though, to be honest. We do a special event every now and then where we bring ships in and do something fun like that. But it's it's like the organic nature of PvP out in low sec and faction warfare is it's a lot more engaging than setting up a fight that has a bunch of rules and everybody's trying to make sure that every single thing is perfectly fair about it and all that. A lot of our older players just don't enjoy that style as much anymore, and so we're really pushing to get more organic PvP opportunities wherever we can find it. And then we do regular old-fashioned red versus blue as a kind of just an event really, and we'll do it every now and then, but mainly we're focusing on low sec, it's a little bit of null and some wormhole.
So does faction warfare scratch the itch of looking for that casual PvP?
Absolutely. I mean, and mostly it's just because, again, we don't necessarily have to be part of the system, and we weren't part of the system for a long time, and we still got a ton of content. It's just faction warfare is just so accessible. It's right next to high sec, so it's easy to you move supplies right over to the edge, and so you can get pretty fast reships. We set our clones so that we can pod death right back to our reships and then come back out, and it's just super convenient for us, which is that's kind of really what the main point of RVB was to begin with, which was we're trying to make PvP on EVE as accessible and easy to get into as fast as possible and as easy as possible, so you don't have to wonder when the next fight's coming, essentially, because we're always getting another fight. And so that's really what it's about, and trying to get new bros into it too. That's always fun.
Before we sort of ask the question of the series, which is what does LowSec look like to you in 2020, is there anything you can't let go, or is there any highlights you missed? Anything that you found interesting you want to bring up? Little tales from your adventures?
Wow, let me see. I mean, the main thing has just been it was such a change and a challenge for us to try to wrap our heads around the faction warfare system and like how we can basically exploit it to make people bring us content, and that was like the best part of it all, and the friends and alliances that we made while we were out there, plus the recruiting opportunities were really amazing too, because basically you've got, I mean, if you're recruiting from local, then you might be talking to a minor, but if you're recruiting in faction warfare space and in the militia chat, then you're talking to somebody who's interested in PvP and really wants to learn. So
on the note of recruiting, if someone's interested in joining RVB, how do they go about doing that?
That's the easiest thing ever. You just, what's your favorite color, red or blue? If you like red, you apply to the Corporation Red Federation. If you like blue, you apply to the Corporation Blue Republic. And basically, like I said, our recruitment process is we look at our ban list, and if your name's not on there, then we hit accept. So you don't have to put anything about convincing us that you're a great fit for RVB. Everybody's a great fit for RVB.
Awesome. So back to the question of the series. You mentioned you're going to be continuing to fly in LOSEC even though you're not a part of faction warfare itself. What does LOSEC look like to you in 2020? What do you think it's going to look like, and what do you hope it's going to look like?
A big fat farm full of farmers. I mean, since the loyalty points are going to now, obviously they've shifted. Gallente militias at like tier 4 or 5, and Caldari militias at tier 1. So that means that it's all of the farmers that were on Caldari's side are going to switch to Gallente's side, and they're all going to be out there trying to farm that sweet LP. And it's just going to be great. We're just going to be roaming system to system and looking for targets and taking fights as we find them. It's going to be great.
What about the people that say LOSEC and faction warfare are dead? Is that true? You agree with that?
I've never understood that. I totally disagree with that. And I've posted, like every time I see it on Reddit, shout outs to R-Eve, I just shake my head because I'm like, I don't, check our kill boards. We're out there every single day. I mean, you can't argue with it, and that just gets downvoted. So, but I mean, the realities of it is, I guess it depends on, I don't know, who you ask. I don't know. Did we get good at finding content in faction warfare because we've been doing it so long and we've just been out there and we've really gotten the knack of catching and killing people? I don't know. But for us, it just seems like we can't imagine being somewhere else. Faction warfare LOSEC has been just an absolute content goldmine, and I think it's in 2020. It's just going to continue to be a content goldmine. And the cool part about it, and maybe this is why people are a little salty about it, is that it's harder to use capital ships in faction warfare because we can exploit the sites to basically keep capital ships out. And like even if we're fighting in a large, they can't sino into the large. They gotta sino in, and then they gotta warp to the large, which gives us time to see it and react to it, so we can decide whether we're taking the fight or not. So it's great for people who want to do small gang in subcaps. Faction warfare is like, that's the paradise. That's the place to be. Black Rise, Placid. It's amazing.
And one last question I have is, one of the other criticisms of LOSEC and faction warfare over the last couple of years is you had pirate groups like Snuff that had heavy oppression on groups, the smaller groups, from trying to put up their own structures, mine moons, do any sorts of those other activities. With Snuff broken up and Penazal taking them over, do you find that oppression, I mean, you had some of it dealt your way. Is that holding things back? Is it a problem? Can people deal with it? What's your take on that?
It is a problem for those who are truly embracing faction warfare, and they base their group identity on being in faction warfare, and they really care about capturing those systems and swaying the tier level and all that. For them, yeah, it's a huge problem, and I totally sympathize with them. But for RVB, it's just we joined just to see what we can make for content, and so for us, like I said, we don't really have structures out there. We're not really trying to mine out there. It's all just for the content. But for the guys that are really trying to take it seriously, yeah, I totally could see how Snuffed and then and even Ardra and those guys, could be considered oppressive. For us, it was a matter of yeah, we got dropped on by Snuff all the time. It became a running joke, and then Snuff, I think they got so much crap for it on Reddit, they actually slowed down their. We noticed they stopped dropping so many caps on us so often, and we're really attempting to maybe change their ways on that in the end, or before the end, I should say. But there's always going to be that if there's is to be made, I guess, then you're going to always have giant groups who are going to find a reason to poke their head into LowSec and see how they can influence the map. And I don't see how you're ever going to stop that.
Right on. Well, speaking of giant groups looking to influence the map, we've got a bit of news from NullSec today. This is news which is interesting to me, mostly because our old friend, our old co-host, Ron USMC was there streaming the fight, so we've got some good footage from it to show you. But in case you missed it, down in Stain, of all regions, which, by the way, is not connected to LowSec and probably never will be, a Keepstar died. It belonged to a Russian alliance called Good Sax, and there's been a sort of a Russian coalition, so to speak, down there, formerly known as Stainwagon. Maybe they're still known as that. I'm not up on the colloquialisms down there. But they had been harassing Legacy throughout the Southern War, which recently wrapped up between Legacy Coalition and Fraternity Coalition down in the southern regions, Catch, Esoteria, Void, areas like that. Memory serves. And the Torrid, thank you, that was the word. So they had been harassing them down there, and a lot of that, a bit of a history lesson for you, is that when Legacy first moved down to the south, they didn't move down into vacant space. They kicked people out, and the people they kicked out were Stainwagon, was a bunch of Russian alliances. And so those alliances sort of hunkered down in Stain, vowed to take back their space, and have been basically harassing Legacy ever since. They kicked it up a notch during the Southern War because Legacy couldn't really focus heavily on pushing them back. They had Fraternity to deal with. But now, after the Southern War ended, in November, it was announced on Legacy's side that they were going to undergo a burn Stain campaign. They announced it back in November, have been doing fleets out there, killing structures, things like that, and it sort of has culminated in the destruction of this Keepstar. It's worth noting that, this doesn't happen in a vacuum. So even though, Legacy was aided to a great extent by the Imperium in the Southern War, they were neutrals there, or not neutrals, they were friendly there. They're also friendly in the big war that happened on two fronts. We really need a better name for the big war. It's generally the worst marketed war ever, even though it's one of the most important in my opinion.
Talking about the one last summer, the two fronts, yeah.
The big war with the two fronts, I think Legacy likes to call it the where they almost got evicted in ULX. That's the sticking point, the way you can remember it. In any case, I'm getting sidetracked. In that war, the Imperium and Legacy were allies. That's where they first became allies. But in this particular engagement, where Good Sax was getting their Keepstar killed, you had the Imperium down there actually fighting against Legacy. I'm not sure if they had a deal with Good Sax and those Russian groups, which in fact they used to, if memory serves, because there used to be the Red Swarm Federation was a thing. But they were fighting against Legacy down south. They're also fighting against Legacy up north, because Legacy, while they're burning Stain, they're also up in Tenal Venal area fighting with GOTG, and notably the Imperium has gone up, or at least certain portions of it have gone up to help defend GOTG. So it's all a giant mess, and it's going to be interesting to watch. I need to better wrap my head around it so I can keep you guys better informed. But definitely be on the lookout for some interesting political machinations going on.
Yeah, I think for Legacy, it's, we Legacy went through a 7-month war that you mentioned with Fraternity. That was pretty grueling. And then we had this long break of peace. And now you just got, Legacy's a large group that's sort of broken a lot in a bunch of different alliances. You got a bunch of groups looking for content. So the Stain push is a a legacy like, oh, you're all invited to come hang out over here, and there's good content, but you have other groups like, I'd rather go participate up north, or I'd rather go see what's going on in Tribute. So that's why you see Legacy, the name Legacy, around in different areas. But this was a good fight.
Yeah. Keepstar died, so that was cool. In other news, you remember from last episode, we were lamenting the lack of patch notes for the patch that happened. Well, they came out on the day of the patch, so that was cool. And if you are watching this around the time of recording the event, which is currently happening where you can get the blueprints for the new shield slaves, those are happening right now in Losec. Speaking of which, Zen, have you guys run any of these event sites, or have you gone after anyone running the event sites?
We've tried going after some of the guys. I hate to say it, we haven't actually tried the events. We had a great time with the filaments though, because that fit right in our model, which was fleet up and take a filament basically, and it shows you how to mill. That was great. Oh, those were great.
Yeah, one of the best things CCP ever did. If you're listening, put them back in the game.
That
Sorry,
was so much fun, so much. But yeah, we tried going after a couple guys, and yeah, it was total fail.
These are the Draugr events, right? They're called Draugr.
Yeah, it's tricky. So you've got I think it was a I can't remember which ship it was, but it was a nice high-powered Tech 2 battle cruiser of some kind, and we went in after it with caracols, and the NPC ended up shredding us. It was hilarious. It was the nightmare NPC, which is the worst one. It was still on grid when we landed on grid, and so we were burning at this thing, trying to keep point at it, and the NPC was just coming behind us and just ripping us to shreds, full newts at 30 or 40 kilometers plus points and nice DPS too. So we all died hilariously in the first attempt at getting this guy, and he just stayed on grid and hoarded on all our kill mills. It's glorious.
You mentioned caracals. Were they heavy missile caracals?
They were not heavy missile caracals. They don't have to actually have heavy missiles on
just
them.
Just the bonus to heavy missiles.
They just have to have the bonus, right? Exactly.
So the interesting
thing
about
around.
Yeah, the Draugr sites is that only ships with heavy missile bonuses are allowed in, which is crazy.
Just tricky.
You're talking about the caracal.
Can't get a scepter in.
Yeah, exactly. So you can't tackle stuff. You're talking about
That's
Drakes
right.
are probably very popular, or maybe even Cerberuses, stuff like this. But in addition to these Draugr sites and the heavy missile thing, heavy missiles got a bonus, right? 5% damage on application. So I was wondering, we've been kicking around, do heavy missile caracals work now?
That's what we're doing too. Basically seeing if there's something that can work for hunting these guys down. That's more effective than the RLMO caracal, which is total.
Take a look at the Bellicose. Just saying.
Yeah.
Target pay bonus goes a long way.
It does, but man, the ship needs some tank or something, man. It's like paper. But
if you're comparing it to a caracal, there's not much of a difference there, and the Bellicose is significantly faster. I'm a fan of the Bellicose. I really like
target
that ship.
painter bonus, right?
Target
and I really like it because it's essentially a caracal, but nobody thinks of it like a caracal.
Right.
So you can run around in a rapid light missile launcher Bellicose, and you even have more drones than the caracal. You have similar levels of DPS and tank, significantly faster, and people will take fights with you when you're essentially just a rapid light caracal.
Yeah,
there's a lot to be said for that.
Heavily
too.
slept on. Yeah.
I do have one complaint about the thing, and I may be wrong about this, but when I read the patch notes, I didn't see any T3Cs included in the allowed list for the sites. But T3Cs, multiple of them have subsystems that bonus heavy missiles. TCP, please. Why are you so racist against my Tech 3 cruiser? I want to take a Loki in here, and I can't freaking take a Loki in here.
That's interesting. I didn't really think about that. Yeah, the subsystem would add a bonus, right? Yeah.
Be great.
They specifically mention it has to be Tech 1 faction or a T2 ship that has a bonus to heavy missiles. And I'm like, T3s exist.
They do.
CC, please.
I think they're really going after wanting you to use the Drake, right? I feel like that's the target ship. They're want you to get in a Drake or a Drake Navy.
Did they release any new Drake skins this patch? I feel like that.
I didn't notice, but yeah, you might be right.
That should have happened if it didn't. CCP, get on your marketing. All right. Anything else of these patch notes? I know there was a pretty good going over of them on the Sunday show. At least Randolph went through in pretty good depth. But is there anything that you guys in particular like stuck out to you that affects your gameplay?
Not really. I mean, the heavy missile thing is interesting, but the bonus is it just makes things that use heavy missiles a little bit better. It doesn't put anything that wasn't meta into meta. Like the heavy missile Caracal, I don't think is going to be a thing, even though everybody wants it to be. But the Cerberus got a nice push, and for a world where hacks are dominated by the Immunin, maybe that's something for them. But
maybe you see a Drake Navy meta could start to happen. No, I wish it would be. That'd be kind of cool.
It's not
Typhoons,
enough.
rapid heavy
Yes, okay.
Typhoons are
So
like
Typhoons,
OP now.
Yes, I forgot to mention that. So I see a lot of people running around in the old Dano Foons again with the rapid heavies, and they seem to be a lot of fun.
Well, it's because also the Typhoon got a bonus or a buff to its application bonus recently as well. Like,
yes,
I think it was last
patch. Got a lot of help. You're right.
They got a buff, and then they got another buff this time. Like, rapid heavies applies so well on the Typhoon. It is insane.
Yeah.
Also, I'm being corrected in chat by Insidious Sainthood. He says that CCP came out and explicitly said they did not allow T3Cs into these sites because you can fit T3Cs for Logi, and they wanted these sites to not be balanced around having fleets with Logi.
Okay.
Shout out Insidious Sainthood, man. What's up? Insidious for CSM.
There's the Keepstar blowing up on stream here. Always pretty explosions.
All right, well, let's move on here. Let's get into our segment we like to call Something You Might Not Know. It's where the hosts and the guests try to tell the audience something they might not know in and around EVE Online. Could be player history, could be lore, could be mechanics, anything like that. This time I did warn the guests and the host. So if you guys don't have your Something You Might Not Know tips, it's entirely your fault. And to give you some extra time, because I expected you all to not have them ready, Silver, I'm going to give you a link in Discord. Throw it up on stream for me, because my Something You Might Not Know is actually a tool. It's a very useful tool that I use all the time when I'm playing EVE. It's a market tool. It's really just a market reference, so to speak. It's called evemarketer.com, EVEmarketer.com, evemarketer.com. Not a sponsor, by the way. I just love this tool and use it all the time. So basically, it's like the UI interface of EVE.
It's not working.
That's because your URL is wrong.
Copied it.
Your URL is wrong. What? Why can't you use it?
I copied it.
No. Click the link that says, "Did you mean evemarketer.com?"
I copied the link you pasted me.
In your browser, there's
I'm
this thing
clicking
that says,
it.
"Did you?"
Works for
Still
me.
not working.
Oh,
Okay,
no.
well, Silver is in China or something, and his internet's not working. So I'm sorry, stream. Let me link it. I'll post it in the comments on YouTube
There
for
we
those
go.
of you who watch it later as well. In any case, this is a site that's basically the UI of the EVE market, but it shows you market orders from everywhere in EVE. So if you're just sitting, you're out in Nullsec somewhere, you got some loot, you want to say, oh, how much is this worth in Jita? You can go and look it up. Or if you're like me and you bought Plex and you're like, where do I sell this Plex? You could just look it up and see, oh, the highest buy orders are out in Valor for some stupid reason. I'll fly out to there in my Scepter and go sell it to those. So this is just something that I use quite often. It also is, I find it helpful if you find that you need like a bubble, which is a thing that I needed recently for an engagement. I needed a mobile warp disruption bubble. And it's super hard sometimes if you're not near a trade hub to figure out where's the closest place to buy one. Because you could be like at our region border. And so sure, you could fly 10 jumps one direction to go buy your bubble. But if you go 2 jumps the other direction into a different region, there may be another available. And so what I like to do is just go to evemarketer.com, look for where are the bubbles in and around the area I am, and then go and buy what I need to buy. But it's just an awesome tool that I use that I thought you guys might find useful as well.
Agree.
All right,
We use
Silver.
it all the time.
You're up.
Well,
What's something our audience might not know?
I think one thing our audience may not know is that Lowsec isn't dead. right?
Yay.
Everyone says that. So everyone who is talking on Eve about Losec's dead, faction warfare is dead, that's not true. It may be for certain play styles, like we mentioned earlier today, but if you're looking for a way to get into PvP, do some small gang, learn to cut your teeth, learn how to pilot your ship, learn all kinds of different mechanics, faction warfare is still the place, or Losec is still the place to be. And I'm really happy groups like RVB embraced it and went down there and are still finding the fights and still creeping out into nullsec. You know, Losec has a great location on the map that you can experience all kinds of different levels of PvP and really get some good engaging content. So things you may not know, Losec is not dead, man. Just go check it out.
It's true. Check the kill boards if you don't believe them. Go to Tama. You want to die? Go to Tama.
Who was it on the last episode? Ashtarothi, something you might not know is that Tama is currently under siege. Have they?
Oh, yeah.
Does anyone know? Did they win it?
They did.
They got it.
They did.
Awesome.
That's right. Aideron Robotics specifically led that. And yes, they flipped it for the Glente militia. But just the fact that those groups are in there doing that means there's targets to shoot. And they're usually in bite-sized groups, like 20, maybe 30, usually in frigates or cruisers of some sort. So very engageable stuff. Get out there and check it out.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, Zen, you're up. What's
All right, I got a couple. One is, if you don't know about it, the Magic 14. That's the 14 skills that everybody should know and try to get as high as possible, especially for new bros that are training their way up. Don't just
this is perfect. I want to hear it.
Learn the Magic 14. Train the Magic 14. If you Google Magic 14 Eve Online, you will find it. The other thing I wanted to mention was there's a Novice Frigates Handbook out there. I wish I knew who puts it out, but it's you can find it on Reddit, or you can just Google Novice Frigates Novice Frigates Yearbook 2019, and you'll find it. That's a really great resource. It shows all the different frigates and how they should be used and how they can be used and how they match up against each other with statistics and everything. If you're into the math of PvP, you will absolutely love it. But yeah, and the last thing I wanted to say is that the passive align is a lie.
Yeah. So
it doesn't matter what direction your ship's pointing, except for MJDing, I'll give you that, but it does not matter for your alignment speed which direction your ship's pointing when you come out of warp, or when you come out of gate.
If you enter a system from I realized this from my boss battleship, because it's pretty much the only MJD capable ship that also has a jump drive.
Yeah.
So if you jump to a Sino or something and you enter a system, if you hit your MJD without pointing your ship in any other direction, you will just MJD towards the sun. Every time.
Oh, wow. There you go.
So if you're ever hunting boss battleships and they hit their MJD before double clicking in space, just start burning towards the sun, because they're going to end up that direction.
Nice. That's a good one.
Yeah. That mechanic is because your ship is still a dot, and it's just a dot in space.
It
does not know which way your ship is facing. So when you come out of the gate, you're like,
it's just random.
It's just a drawn model. So when you come out of the gate, you're like, I'm facing a moon. That does not help you get into warp any faster if you try to warp to it.
Yeah. Your ship will align exactly what it says it aligns at in your ship stats. It has nothing to do with which way you're pointed. You won't align to one gate at 3 seconds and another gate at 5. Your ship aligns the same way every time.
I get the impressions then that you've had long conversations with very
as a new bro
fleet mates.
Trying to teach new bros how to PvP. It's one of those things that it's one of those myths that stayed around for, I don't know why it keeps going, but people keep coming in. People keep mentioning it in Fleet, and it's like, oh god, this again.
Then you get to the argument. I know for a fact that I warp faster. That's in your brain, dude. Exactly. Because it's not a mechanic.
Let's time it. I'm like, timing it, it's not going to matter. Our skills are going to be different. The ship says, timing has nothing to do with anything. Anyway.
You know what should put it to death now is that CCP added that warp vector bar, right? So then you can see how long exactly it takes to get into warp, and it'll be the same every time.
Every time. Just record yourself. Anyway.
Got a little bonus tip there in the something you might not know section. Let's move on to a couple announcements in and around CIS. So we've got a new show coming to the Talking in Stations network, so to speak. I don't think we're an actual network. We're just sort of a collection of people who like talking about EVE Online.
I
But
like
this
network.
particular podcast, called Echo Station, working title, is talking about the recently finished EVE Echoes mobile game. The beta wrapped up, what was it, January 10th? And so we've got a bunch of people who've done some good work on Echoes and the mobile game, stuff like that. They're also EVE players, both of them that I know of, the two hosts, Angel and Danny. And they've got a good show. They've done a pilot episode that we've watched internally and thoroughly enjoyed, but they're doing their first premiere episode of Echo Station this Friday, January 24th at 6 p.m. Pacific. So that's 0200 EVE time. It's a USTZ show, so we'll just base it around 0600 Pacific Standard Time.
Yeah,
6
totally
p.m.
watch that, because Angel is one of my guys, and he's super into Echoes. He's very knowledgeable. He can answer any of your questions. Like, it's going to be good.
Indeed. And the show is going to be running weekly, so mark it on your calendar every Friday, 6 p.m. Pacific. Although the day may change to Thursdays, but at least for this coming week, it's Friday, 6 p.m. Pacific, and onward every week, at least for the next 6 weeks. We're going to have a good show on the EVE Echoes mobile game. That'll be fun. I quite enjoyed playing the game. Did any of you guys play it?
I have.
I have.
Too.
I'll be honest though, man. Like, if I'm gonna play EVE, I'm just gonna play EVE. But it's a well done game, and it's a great intro to EVE universe. If you need more EVE for some reason, it's very well done. I enjoyed it, but I'd rather just play EVE personally.
Yeah, I got into it because I really like the idea. It's very, very similar to EVE. There are a few mechanics differences, but in general, it scratches the same itch. And the things I liked about it was there weren't really established power blocks. So me loading up BlueStacks, which is a program to basically emulate Android on your computer, I loaded that up. I multi-box like a couple of accounts and just roll around, and I can control a system in nullsec in freaking EVE Echoes just because I'm there on my own and I can do it. There's not some power block who's going to come around and kick me out or anything like that. Well, there are, but they aren't established yet. They aren't hunkered down. They don't have multiple keep stars in every system or whatever. So that's what really drew me into it, and I hardcore binged on that game until the beta ran out. So it was a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to when it actually comes out. Hopefully there's no crazy monetization. All right, and other announcements next week on Talking Stations on the midweek show, we're going to have Wangs, Pen is Outs, Ardra, however you want to pronounce them. They're going to be here on the show. It's going to be awesome. We've talked about them a lot throughout this series. What does LoSec look like in 2020? And so now we're going to hear it from the horse's mouth, so to speak. Tune in at 20 through 59 EVE time this upcoming Wednesday to hear from Pen is Out. And that'll do it for this week's episode of Talking in Stations. Thanks again to my co-host Silver Suspiria, a member of Federation Uprising, also our fantastic guest, Zensai from the Blue Republic, or just RVB in general. What was your title again?
Thanks,
I heard people calling you the Supreme FC.
I am the current chairman, which makes me in charge of, basically, I herd the cats that herd the cats. So,
I like Supreme FC. That's your
anything goes wrong, it's all my fault. But I let the CEOs of Red and the CEO of Blue basically handle everything, so my job's easy.
Right on. Well, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for having us on, guys. Thanks, Artemis and Silver, and to Talking in Station, Matterall for putting it together, and CCP for making a great game. Really appreciate it. And feel free to touch base with us anytime and see how we're doing in a month or so.
Will do. All right. Well, tune in next time. Like I said, we'll be here next week with Wangs at 23:59 EVE time. We'll also be here this coming Sunday, 1600 UTC, talkingstations.com, twitch.tv/talkingstations, YouTube Talking in Stations. We nailed our branding on this one. You should learn something. Pen is out. Just saying. All right. See you guys next time.
Take care.